thank you so much for being here for today's live broadcast. It's called How to Deliver Great Customer Experiences in Your Digital Marketing. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm Jay Baer from Convince and Convert, your host for today, joined by two spectacular smarties. This is going to be a lot of fun. Session today brought to you by DAC Group. Speaking of which, we are joined by Nasser Sahool, who's the Senior Vice President of Client Strategy at DAC, joining us from the great nation of Canada. Nasser, how are you?
I'm great. Great to be back with you, Jay.
Always a pleasure, my friend, and really excited to have joining the broadcast today, Jennie Walters. Jennie's the CEO of Experience Investigators, one of the true customer experience geniuses in the entire world, and a good friend. Jennie, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jay. I'm going to bring you around for my introduction from now on.
Every time. We'll just record this. I'll give you the clip. You can just cut it and play it before your speeches. You've got it. No problem. Jennie also has an excellent podcast. Tell them about it, Jennie, before we get started.
Yeah, you can hear me and my co-host Adam Toporek talk about customer experience issues at Crack the Customer Code, wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's a good one. Crack the customer code. Dial it in, my friends. Speaking of dialing it in, we're going to have some time, I think, for your questions today. Go ahead and use the questions panel there in go to webinar, ask a question. We'll address as many as we can. If by chance we don't get to them, we will answer them via email. Speaking of email, we will send you the recording and such afterwards. Interact in the Q&A more so than the chat, if you would. It'd be easier to keep track of it. And then we will send you not only the recording of this session, but also some of the other reference materials that we will refer to. You'll get those via email at the conclusion of today's program. Are you ready? All right, let's get right into it, friends. Look, I am deceptively youthful looking. It's the soft lighting in this office, but I've been doing this for a really long time. I started in digital in 1993, which is pre-browser, so pretty much since digital marketing existed. And I can tell you that digital marketing has not historically really focused on customer experience and customer satisfaction. It was sort of somebody else's problem. But now, marketing success without strong customer experience is becoming elusive. Customers have a lot more choices. They have a lot more power. They have the ability to delete, to unsubscribe, to ignore, that they simply just did not have in the early days of digital. And what we find now is that customers themselves and their preferences and their desire for better experiences are actually impacting our digital execution. New research from Salesforce, which just came out a month or so ago, found that 84% of global marketers say that customer expectations are changing their actual digital strategies. Now, this may seem self-evident, but I can tell you that it has not always been that way. It's typically been, we're going to do what we're going to do as a brand in digital, and some customers will like that and give us money, and other customers won't like that. Oh, well, and now we're sort of turning it upside down, and the customers are saying, you know what, this is what we prefer, and brands are having to react accordingly. So it's almost like it's all been flipped upside down. Nasser, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And as we think about the circumstances that we're living through right now, there's a real movement around understanding the value of what people are looking for, and how that is changing in a really, really accelerated way. You know, our entire economy has been turned upside down in terms of how we discover brands, how we interact with them. And a lot of brands have been incredibly slow to respond to that, I think.
Incredibly slow indeed. I think we keep thinking that, you know, now it's time to swing the pendulum back the other way, and it never swings back, unfortunately. What we're really talking about here in this session is the convergence of marketing and customer experience. And we've been talking about that, Jennie, for a long time, right? Like this idea that marketing and customer experience will eventually merge. I mean, it's been at least a decade that we've been talking about it, but it's actually here now. That same Salesforce report found that 80% of global marketers, 8 in 10, say that their marketing teams are also now in charge of the overall customer experience initiatives for the enterprise. Jennie, does that surprise you at all?
I don't think it surprises me. I think what we need to do sometimes a better job of is defining what customer experience really is, because sometimes marketers are told, you're doing customer experience, but then let operations and everybody worry about that after the sale. And we really have to think about it as this universal idea.
No doubt, well said. It is indeed possible for digital marketing to deliver outstanding CX. It just doesn't happen very often today because it hasn't ever been prioritized. This is a sad statistic. 2/3 of consumers cannot recall a time when a brand exceeded expectations. Uh-oh, that's not good. That's a problem. But it's also a huge opportunity, because a stat like this tells me, well, geez, if nobody is exceeding expectations, then all you've got to do is just add a little CX thinking throughout the entire funnel, and it will stand out in ways that customers will really notice. The inadequacies of your competition is actually to your advantage in the modern age, and I don't think we talk about that often enough. There are lots of challenges with omni-channel. We've talked about omni-channel a lot over the last few years, and omni-channel creates some customer experience challenges when you try to align it across the board. Nasser, you want to comment on these stats?
Yes, absolutely. So if we think about the fact that the stat that you previously shared, around 2/3 of people not remembering a time when brands' customer experiences exceeded their expectations, the instant response to that is why? Why aren't brands doing this? And the short answer is that brands are, in military terms, always fighting the last war. So they're gearing up for expectations that don't exist anymore and that have radically shifted. And then when you look at that from a practical perspective and you go to that next layer down of why is that, this study that we had Forrester conduct earlier on in the year, that you're going to be able to download off of the DAC website, shows you some incredibly startling insight as to why brands are not prepared to meet and frankly exceed rapidly shifting customer experiences, or expectations, I should say. So when we look at the reasons behind this and what the study found, 85% of marketers are not able to derive actionable insight from customer data. 77% have difficulty identifying and implementing the tools that they need. But the implications of that are that an equal number are having difficulty maintaining a unified customer profile across channels. 74% have difficulty delivering consistently on the brand promise across the customer journey, and plenty have difficulty collaborating across functions. So there is a functional organizational challenge, there is a technology challenge, even though a lot of technology platforms are available out there with the promise that they can do this, but even when these are implemented, there are challenges with accessing that data, connecting the customer data, and then doing something different and actioning that data in a way that at the very least meets customer expectations, keeps up with them, and then ultimately exceeds them.
No question about it. Friends, I see if folks have just joined, a few of you. I want to remind you, please feel free to use the questions section of the GoToWebinar control panel. We'll address as many questions as we can before we wrap up today. And indeed, we'll send you a recording and a link to some of the reports, including the one that Nasser just referenced. We're going to tell you 5 ways, friends, 5 ways to embed great customer experience into your digital marketing, laying on top of this macro trend of marketing and CX convergence. The first of these is to create a consistent internal vision for customer experience. And one of the ways to think about this is, what elements of customer experience actually matter to your brand? You could probably write that down now and be pretty close. But the second half of this statement is the one that really matters. What trade-offs are you willing to make to provide a better customer experience? Are you willing to generate fewer leads? Are you willing to have fewer clicks? Are you willing to have a higher cost per lead? Are you willing to have a higher cost of customer acquisition in order to embed better customer experience in the early stages of the customer relationship? Because if you say that you care a ton about CX, but you're not willing to make any financial trade-offs that make better CX possible, how much of CX do you actually care about, right? Customer experience has to be about actions, not just attitudes. And sometimes that's where it falls apart. Like, yeah, we're all about the customer, as long as we don't have to pay more for leads. Those two things don't necessarily align. So it's about actions, not about attitudes. And the first way to have this shared vision for CX in your organization is to create a customer experience mission statement, which is some of the work that Jennie and her team do. And so I would love for you to walk through how this works, please.
Yeah, I think you hit something that I just want to underline too, because a lot of times we hear from leaders that customer experience is a priority. They have big town hall events and they put up a banner that says customers are number one, and then they expect things to change. And a lot of what's happening to marketing leaders specifically right now is they're just being told like, hey, congratulations, you are in charge of customer experience now. They're given no additional investment, they're given no resources, and they don't really define a goal around what that is. And so if we don't take the steps to really build this foundational piece, then what happens is everybody in your organization is making judgment calls based on what they might personally believe is a good customer experience. And to exactly what you just said, Jay, we have to sometimes make trade-offs of, do we want to be fast or do we want to be more accurate? Do we want to promise that we will keep our customers informed, or do we want to create an automated communication strategy so that we don't have to invest there? There are all sorts of ways that this plays out. So when we think about a customer experience mission statement, we're really taking that from the idea of what we know as the organizational vision, values, mission, but we want to translate that into something that really talks about what is the experience that we promise and how can we deliver it all the time. It's not really about your products and services, it's about the experience that the customer has with you. So to do this well, we want to answer these questions. I'm going to go through them really fast. It takes a little longer when you do this with your team, but you want to start with, what is that brand promise? And instead of, I hate to say this, but instead of thinking like marketers, sometimes we have to step back and we have to think, what is the actual promise that we're making customers? Because sometimes we can get a little lofty with our internal language. We want to make sure we're continuing to translate that to what does the customer really expect from us? And then we want to really take that a step further and think about what is in this for the customer. Because I've seen a lot of mission statements that are about shareholder value, that are about organizational growth, and that's not really doing anything for the customer. We have to think about, what are we trying to do? And I want you to think about that in a way that is beyond your products and services. What are your customers actually doing because of your products and services? One of my favorite ones is IKEA. Actually, they talk about how it's about everyday living, providing better everyday living. They don't mention furniture, they don't mention those things, but that's what this is about. And then, part of a great customer experience is consistency. When you think about the times that you as a customer have said, this is not how I expect to be treated, right? That's because you expect to be treated a certain way consistently throughout your customer's journey. So if we don't ask this question up front, it can be very easy to say, we are going to deliver world-class customer experience all the time in 5 minutes or less, or something that doesn't make sense consistently. So we want to think about, who are we and how do we show up for our customers? And then ultimately, this is about, how do we want our customers to feel? We want them to be so connected to a positive emotion that it builds loyalty, that they have those exceeded expectations, and that they tell all their friends about us, right? That's part of what we're trying to do here, is build referral strategies and word of mouth marketing and all of those things. So to do this well, you have to think about, how do you apply this mission to your products and processes? And so it's a whole series of questions, but once you get there, you want to make sure it's concise. It's something people can tuck in their hearts, because if you have 4 paragraphs with 18 bullet points after, People can't internalize that. And as business people, we love to do that, don't we? So, and there's a workbook there that you can download that walks you through these questions. But this is kind of where you want to start, because that way, when you are thinking as a person and making those judgment calls about what do we want to do here, how do we want to connect with our customers on, the digital landscape and when they walk into the store and all these different pieces, you have this mission statement as your North Star. It makes everything else easier. It makes every decision easier.
I love it. Take a picture of the URL if you like to be able to grab the free downloadable workbook on how to create a customer experience mission statement. Once we have the mission statement, the next piece of this equation, Jennie, is a customer experience success statement. What does that look like?
Yeah, say that a few times fast. It's really fun. Yeah, one of the things that we see a lot is that, again, we're giving goals around customer experience that are not well defined. And so what happens is they say, you know what, we're going to create an exceptional world-class experience. And then in a year, maybe things haven't changed that much. And maybe there haven't been those resources invested. And so they go up to the CMO and they say, well, nothing's really happened. I guess this customer experience thing doesn't really work. And of course, that's ridiculous. I mean, think about any sales team who has a bad quarter. Can you imagine somebody being like, well, I guess sales doesn't work? But that's how we treat customer experience. And the way we need to think about it is a strategy and a business discipline. And by defining what success looks like, you set yourself and your organization up for success, and you start with those organizational goals. Because it's not enough to say we're going to have a great customer experience. You want to look at what are you actually trying to do as an organization. Get specific here. This, unlike the mission statement, which should be your North Star for a long time, this can be time bound. This can be something that you say in a year, this is where we want to be, in 3 years, in 5 years, because that way you can actually measure progress. And so you want to look at things like, okay, if we are saying as an organization that we want more market share, that's one of our organizational goals. Let's start there. And then you want to think about who are your leaders and what do they care about? Because I hate to say it, but sometimes customer experience does not translate to the C-suite, right? They're thinking, how does being nice to customers affect our bottom line? How does this show up as return on investment? So we need to start thinking about their goals as leaders. Think about your chief financial officer. They're probably interested in decreasing expenses. Well, you can make a case that a better, proactive, positive customer experience will reduce service costs, will reduce the need for refunds or retribution for customer service issues. So you can make a case around these things, speaking your leader's language. And then you want to really look at what are those CX specific outcomes that could drive this, that would make those goals happen. And so if we're talking about, for instance, more market share, we can use things like referral rates or word of mouth marketing, or the flip of that, which is customer churn, and look at those very specific ways to measure how are we doing here. And if you're also measuring customer feedback with customer experience metrics like Net Promoter Score or customer satisfaction rate, then you can start tying those metrics back to the leading indicators of those outcomes. So you can say, you know what, if our NPS goes up, that will mean more referrals. That will mean higher revenue because referred customers actually spend more with your organization and they do it faster and stay with you longer. And so you can make all of these different business cases to really define success. And that way, even if you don't get there the first year, if you're showing progress, it's just like any other business outcome. You can start adjusting and rearranging resources and looking at how you're actually getting there in order to deliver on these goals. But all of this has to be reality checked. And I say this because, again, it's so easy to talk about customer experience. We all know what it's like when we have an incredible customer experience. And so we say, that's what we're going to do for all of our customers all the time. And yet, sometimes we don't have the resources. Sometimes, you know what, marketing, I don't know about you, but I see a lot of different priorities every quarter, right? Like we have so many plates that are spinning in the air that there are times we have to get really narrow in our focus here in order to make sure that we're not trying to boil the ocean and make sure that we are showing progress to prove the return on the investment and to show our customers too that we're serious about this, that we are showing up for them in a way that maybe they have not expected. That stat you shared, Jay, I mean, I still have heart palpitations when I think about it. Like, you know, the fact that we can't exceed expectations on a regular basis like that, that could be one of the ways that we use this too.
No doubt. I want to talk about briefly before we get to the next point, this idea of not just sort of doing customer experience as an exercise, like, well, we did it, guys, and sort of declaring victory, but making sure that it becomes something that is part of the fabric of the culture, and using this mission statement as a tool, not an artifact, as part of that. What do you mean by that, Jennie?
Yeah, I love that we're talking about this because it's so important. What I see sometimes, and I'm sure you all have seen this, where you walk into corporate headquarters and they have like their vision etched in marble on the wall as you walk in, and every worker walks by that every day, but they don't really know it. They don't really use it. It's just this pretty thing. And if we're not careful, that can happen with the customer experience mission statement. But that's why we want to use it as a tool for, let's talk about, did we live up to this mission when we delivered for our customers? When we're building our digital marketing campaigns, are we going to do this in the spirit of the mission? How can we tie that back to that? What if we didn't live up to expectations? Can we explore how we didn't live up to this mission so we can learn from it? We really want to use it as something that is part of evaluating how we're doing. We also want to use it as kind of shorthand with one another when we have to make those trade-offs, when we have to make those hard decisions, and you have to prioritize. You can say which one of these will help us live that mission more. But this is all about everybody winning. That's what's so cool about it, because if customer experience is done well, then every single person in your organization wins, including it improves the employee experience, because nobody likes to serve a bunch of complaining customers. So, you know, there's so much win in this. We just have to make the case for it in a better way, in a more strategic way. And I know that, you know, marketing in general has come so far in this. We've had to prove so much around metrics and around strategy. And now it's a matter of weaving in this customer experience language as well to make sure that everybody understands this is about the entire customer journey and not just that front end, but that's where it starts, right? That's exactly where it starts.
It's where it starts indeed. And that brings us to our second point, which is measuring customer experience throughout the entire funnel. Customer satisfaction, right, or lack of satisfaction, begins at first contact with the brand, not at purchase. So a consumer's feelings, kinship or lack thereof with the brand, begins the first time they ever hear of the brand or the product, the first time. And that first time is typically dictated by marketing or word of mouth, right? Yet, so often we measure it quite differently. So what's nice is that this idea of sort of customer experience math, it's being embraced by business now. This is another data point from the new Salesforce report, which I found amazing. Customer satisfaction is the #1 most valuable success metric for global marketers. #2 is revenue. That shocked me when I read it. Nasser, how about you?
Yeah, in truth, it didn't surprise me because we've increasingly seen a direct connection between customer satisfaction and revenue. Right. There's a direct correlation between them, and not necessarily in the order that people expect. Okay. So I know we're going to get into this in a few minutes, but this idea of not being in control anymore of the brand message around the experience that people have with your brand post pre and post purchase is something that a lot of brands really struggle with. So for example, and what I'm getting at here is audiences, people have the capability today to voice their experiences, their satisfaction, their delight, or their rage at customer experience from brands through user-generated content. And brands are increasingly aware of the impact that has, the direct impact that has on their revenue. You know, Jennie, you talked about this idea of thinking about that customer experience for the entire experience and making it consistent. what I find fascinating in a lot of instances is when we look at it from a marketing perspective, we've been trained to think about segmented experiences for different audiences based on your offering, whether it's a mid-market offering or a high-end offering or what have you. What I find amazing is how that consistency doesn't carry through typically into the post-sale experience. So whereas I may have been trained to perceive a brand as being a high-end brand because of the marketing that's been served up to me, the service component may be a mass market service because you all go through that same service funnel. And there is an enormous disconnect then in my mind because I'm thinking that I'm going to get a white glove service should something go wrong with this high-end purchase. And that disconnect leads to significant impact and disquiet in a brand's reputation. So what you often see is this remarkable difference in customer satisfaction that's showing up in terms of brand reputation for mid-market products, mass market products and high-end products, and where high-end product brand reputation based on customers' feedback is actually not very good and not in line with how brands want to position themselves. And then that directly shows up in the balance sheet downstream as a result of this vocalization of customer satisfaction or lack thereof.
Yeah, and what a lot of brands will say is, well, that's a different department, and as I always tell clients, the customer does not care about your org chart.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is not relevant to them. To them, there is one department. It's called whatever the name of your company is called.
That's right.
And so they don't care. It doesn't matter. So what we're talking about here is trying to hybridize digital marketing and customer experience metrics, right? So one of the things that is often used, or increasingly used, I think it's safe to say, Jennie, in CX circles is the customer effort score. So not just measuring customer satisfaction or propensity to promote in a net promoter score circumstance, but how easy or hard is it to get what you need from the brand? So you can actually ask customers on a scale of 1 to 7, how easy was it to get what I needed from X brand? And that customer effort score is then the total sum of the responses. So 100 times an average of 5 divided by the responses. And Jennie, you think 5 or 6 is pretty good on a 7-point scale? That's what you're shooting for?
Yeah, I mean, some of this is what customers are saying that they want, which is a lot of it is around self-service now. They want knowledge. They want to find their own knowledge. They really rely on digital experiences in a way to move themselves forward. And so what we want is to provide them this way to give us feedback on, in this specific case, was this easy enough? And we aim for 5 or 6 because we found that if we make it too easy, they don't feel like they're getting value. And so if they want it to be enough of, if they're searching for something very specific, we want to serve that up in a certain way. So it's a great metric for those moments of transaction along that digital journey specifically, to find out if we're serving customers in the self-service realm in the way that they are looking to be served now.
I love this because it's a really good reminder that utility in the sense of customer experience, and in particular digital customer experience, doesn't mean that every digital touch point needs to be a deeply immersive, blow your hair back, creative, make you cry moment. A great customer experience in 80% of these self-serve digital transactional formats can be as simple as, if I looked for a thing, did you give me the thing? When I drove to the location, was it open in the way that you said that it was going to be? And is it in the right place? Yeah. It could be something as simple as that. Give me the information I'm looking for and get out of the way. But a lot of marketers don't necessarily think about it in those terms because they don't necessarily have their customer experience hats on. They're looking at it as a branding moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked about this in the last webinar we did together, Nasser, the fireplace center here in my town. There's only one, and my fireplace was broken. I'm like, I got to get a replacement part. Go to the website, go to Google. Yep, okay, they're open 9 to 5 on Wednesdays. Drive there across town. Piece of paper taped to the door. closed on Wednesdays for inventory. I'm like, great, thanks, way to go. Like, no, you're killing me. Killing me. Third thing, make first-party data exchange desirable for customers. So this is, of course, a big thing on the minds of most digital marketers, is the deprecation of third-party cookies and the need to build out your own data profiles on your customers and prospects, because you won't be able to use data stores like Facebook and Instagram and Google in the way that we have enjoyed that over the last few years. And so we've got to gather our own data. But you can turn that into a good experience instead of a bad experience by embracing the principle of utility, as I call it, which is marketing so useful that customers would pay to receive it if you ask them to do so. 75% of customers, according to Accenture, say that a business has never communicated with them in a way that felt too personalized. Now, Nasser, I think this is a really important finding, because you and I both know, being from the marketing world, how often somebody will say in a client meeting, well, that's great, we could do this hyper-personalized experience, but won't customers find that creepy? And it's this idea of using creepiness as a reason to talk you out of something that's hyper-specific and relevant. And people are like, yeah, maybe they will find it creepy, so let's don't do that. And this data suggests that this creepy factor is probably one that we are worried about too much, and that customers are like, you know what, it's okay, just give me what I want.
Maybe we just want to feel loved, Jay. But I think that there's a real element of, you know, kind of inside baseball talk when it comes to this specific subject with marketers. We know what it takes to personalize experiences. We know what the data inputs are. We know the kinds of information that we can glean on about people. So we instinctively get to a point where we're like, maybe that's a little bit too far. Maybe that line, you know, we've taken it too far in terms of personalization. And frankly, when I see it, I might feel a little creeped out because I know what the signals are that's creating this experience. But the overwhelming majority of people out there don't look and sound like you or I. They don't know what goes into the creation of these experiences, and so they are not creeped out, as it were. And sometimes I think that this idea of over personalization is almost an excuse to not do any personalization. It's a cop-out to your boss and your boss's boss, who don't really understand it, but if you tell them, well, this might be a little bit creepy, it gets you off the hook from doing any of it.
And I could not agree more, which is, let's stop doing that, friends. So you can do data collection and personalization in a way that is additive to the customer experience. So this is one of our clients, the Arizona State University Foundation. Like most foundations, they're trying to attract additional patrons and donors. Because it's a very large university, they have lots of initiatives, right? They're trying to solve climate change and cure cancer and clean water. I mean, they're doing a ton of stuff. It's a big school. So this is just an excerpt of their kind of very top of the funnel email that you will receive if you are a potential new donor. Now, I think there's actually 8 or 10 different boxes there. Each of those boxes, first is sustainability, you've got inclusion, research, community service, et cetera, and there's a bunch more. This is the first email. So what they do, and this is not hard to do at all, is they just mine the clicks of this. So they say, all right, we're going to send Jeannie an email, and then we're going to pay attention to what Jeannie clicks on in this email. And then if she clicks on sustainability, she's going to get an email about sustainability. And every email she gets from us after that is going to be about sustainability. Why? Because Jeannie has already told us with her finger that she cares about sustainability. And one of the things I always tell clients is that, look, don't overcomplicate this. If you have a prospect who says they love ketchup, the last thing you should do is spend time telling them about how good your mustard is. Like if a prospect has indicated that they have a very specific set of product or service interests, go with that, right? I think we too often, Nasser, say, well, sure, they like ketchup, but you know, some people who like ketchup also like mustard. So let's get into the whole, if you like this, like you like that. And then we try to convince ourselves that the right approach is to tell them all the products and services we have, because maybe we'll get marginal economic impact, but that marginal economic impact comes at the cost of relevancy. And I don't think it's worth it in most cases.
Yeah, I think that, if it's a hypothesis, then segment off a small subset and
Yeah,
test
test
it.
it. Yeah,
By all
exactly.
means, test it. But I agree with you. Again, I think that it becomes a sledgehammer exercise in a lot of instances to say, okay, we need to push this product over here, or we have inventory over there, or we just have a simple
That's right.
hypothesis. Let's send it out to everybody. Um, but yes, if somebody has told you that this is who they are and this is what they want, then give them exactly what they want.
Absolutely. And you can also gather some of this information in line in a way that's not disruptive to the customer experience. This is actually on YouTube. This is one of my favorite YouTube channels, actually. It's Great Art Explained in 15 minutes. This guy's an art history professor, and he takes great paintings and great sculptures, and it's a 15-minute video. It's like, here's why Van Gogh's Starry Night is good. Here's why it's popular. Here's why it's famous. It's really nice. And then in this, I was just watching this the other day, and I grabbed the screenshot. This was one that they actually served up to me as a recommendation. I hadn't subscribed yet, and it was like, hey, is this video a good recommendation for you? Is it very bad? Is it very good? Somewhere between. YouTube then stores that, and instead of sort of making the algorithm work behind the scenes in an opaque way, they're actually taking the algorithm and bringing it up so that customers are aware of it. This is the same thing they could do. They don't need me to click this, right? They could infer this by how long I watch the video, but they're basically taking the algorithm and pulling down the curtain so that we can see it operating. And I think that's really, really smart.
I agree with that. I think that one of the things we hear from customers again and again right now is, please know me and please know where I am on the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what we're talking about when it comes to personalization is exactly that. They want to be seen and kind of included in the conversation about where they go. And so doing this way has a level of visibility and transparency that actually builds trust, because you're showing that this is a relationship. This isn't just us shouting at you or anything like that. But a lot of that comes back to that Forrester report that you mentioned about, centralized data. Having that customer data in a centralized place is a real challenge, and it's something that that can add a lot of relevance as you move through the customer journey as well.
Giving consumers control, even if in like this case it's just the illusion of control, I think is a seductive way to go. Nasser, talk to us a little bit about Vera Bradley and Samsung.
Absolutely. So on the left here, what you're seeing is an example of understanding your customers. So talking about that first party data and creating assets, creating programs around, in this instance, an entire line made from recycled plastic bottles, and stories and content around that based around understanding deeply who the customer is and what she cares about, and utilizing that into content and advertising that people would be happy to consume. On the right-hand side are examples of, with a brand like Samsung, where they have these incredible CSR initiatives that connect deeply with their customers, but up until recently have been fairly buried and siloed in terms of how they're communicated externally. And with a deeper understanding that these are the kinds of stories, these are the kinds of things that customers really care about and look for from a brand like Samsung, are increasingly making their way into their marketing to provide that holistic view of the brand built around customer expectations, so that it's adding that degree of utility and reasons why.
It's fantastic. Congratulations to you and the DAC team for the great work that you're doing with these leading brands. The fourth thing, and Nasser touched on it a moment ago, is this idea of testing and optimizing digital marketing to enhance customer experience. Digital marketing optimization throughout the totality of its history is almost invariably about financial efficiencies. Cost per lead, cost per click, cost per sale, not customer satisfaction, right? So when we're doing A/B tests in a digital marketing circumstance, it's usually which performs better from a marketing standpoint, not which performs better from a customer satisfaction standpoint. And those might not always be the same data points. But this notion of customer experience thinking. And I loved what Jennie talked about earlier of effort score. Like, how can we just make it easier? Make your navigation sensible, for God's sakes. How can we just make it all easier? That can actually have a big impact on your digital marketing. And what I'm trying to say here is this is not a zero-sum game. It's not optimized digital marketing or customer experience thinking. I think good customer experience thinking, ipso facto, should produce better marketing results. Your mileage may vary, but generally speaking, I think that is the case. And I love this example from Empathy. This is such a terrific homepage / landing page. Losing a loved one is hard enough. Here's the tagline of what we do. Try it for free. Just text us, and we'll send you a link to the app. That's it. There's no other options. There's no other things to click on to speak of. It's just like, here's the thing. It's super clear. It's super easy to understand. We're not trying to confuse you. I love it, right? Just keep it simple. And this is another example of this idea of customer experience thinking from a personalization and relevancy standpoint. This is Grammarly, the writing application. They send you an email every year. Spotify does the same, some of you may be familiar with, which says, hey, here's what you did this year with us. All the things that are kind of highlighted here in this screenshot are customized for the user, right? So here's how many minutes you used it. Here's how accurate it was, etc. And what's funny, and I talked about this idea of CX thinking can actually increase revenue. Mm-hmm. This all emphasizes the free components of Grammarly, but spread throughout this email in a very contextually appropriate way is, hey, by the way, think about how much better your life would be if you use the paid version. This is just your results from the free version. If you use the paid version, oh my God, it would be incredible, right? So but you accept the sales message because the personalization and the customer experience thinking of the message is so additive. It really is a utility. You're like, yeah, maybe I do want the paid version. It's just a really, really good example. Nasser, talk a little bit about Firestone.
Absolutely. So Bridgestone Firestone, this is a tremendous example of customer experience thinking, not in a single asset, but across an entire journey, both online and offline. So what you're seeing here are assets where in an upper funnel environment, somebody's watching their connected TV, they see a Firestone ad, as well as they're browsing on their phone at the same time on Instagram. They see at the same time an ad for Firestone. Later, when they need an oil change, they have recall around the brand itself. They go looking for a coupon. They get served up a very rich search ads that terminates at a landing page with that coupon ready to go. When that coupon is used in a physical location, the mechanic says, well, we noticed that it's been a while since you've had a tire rotation. Would you like to add that? No, I'm not ready for that. And then connecting those data experiences between the online and offline, when it's time for her next oil change, there are also options there for and coupons for tire rotations and other service items. So what I love about this example is it's using that very utilitarian component. It's using branding and advertising as well as content. It's showcasing online and offline and doing this in a way that is scaled across thousands of locations, across multiple lines of business. And it has had spectacular impact and results as far as the business is concerned. And it kind of helps address this concern about, well, if we move from purely lower funnel spending and cost per lead and cost per acquisition into much more of a journey-based approach and much more CX-minded approach, is that going to impact things? And yes, it may impact things in the immediate and short term, but over the mid to long term, it has dramatic impacts for the business and the perception of the business in people's minds.
I love this example.
I like also how you sort of progressively profile the customer, right? So as the brand gets more information on the customer, the marketing itself gets more personalized, right? So we know that you're in White Plains because you clicked a Near Me Now sort of ad in Google, so it says your store is White Plains, New York. Later, when we know your name's Felicia, now it says, hi, Felicia, right? And so as we gather more data, the marketing itself gets correspondingly more personalized, which is absolutely a best practice. Go ahead, Jennie, sorry.
Yeah, I love this example because the other thing that this shows is that you can have a digital strategy, a digital journey, but you can't just have a digital customer. Customers don't identify themselves as digital or not. And so sometimes in marketing, we see that, right? We label people this way. And talk about knowing who I am as a customer and knowing where I am on the journey. This is very much driven by making the customer feel valued and respected about where they are, instead of just dropping the coupons kind of willy-nilly wherever it happens to land in the campaign. So it's a really, really nice example.
Now also think about what it takes to create this journey and to bring it to life, right? There's technology, there's connectivity of data sources, but there's also organizational will and alignment across a brand.
Yes.
We see examples.
None of this happens if everybody's not all bought in.
No, and we see examples, for example, where people are running search ads and then not retargeting on e-commerce because those are run by different teams internally. Like, even as fundamental as that. So when we think about this across and the entire journey across the entire enterprise, it's no mean feat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, considering how many physical locations there are at Firestone, that's the part that's really impressive to me. Is kind of getting everybody lined up using the kind of CX mission statements and success statements that Jennie talked about earlier. Last one, friends, to double down on customer created content. We trust each other more than we trust any brand. It's just sort of a truth. 74% of customers prefer to see prior customers' photos on a website rather than professional images, because we believe a picture that Jennie took or Nasser took or I took or any of you took more so than a photo that was taken in a professional photo shoot environment. There's no doubt about that. And perhaps along the same lines, 7 out of 10 customers say that reviews are more important to them right now than at any time in the past. Part of that's the pandemic, right? Where people aren't really certain what the experience is going to be. And even restaurants maybe you went to for years, you're like, I don't know, how is it now? Like, do they have any staff? Is it COVID-y in there? Like, there's a lot of different conversations about business transactions that you didn't used to have. And so we're relying upon our friends and our peers in the crowds with reviews and similar content more than ever before. And Nasser, I'd love for you to talk about reviews as a business driver for 2 brands that are disparate but are really doing great things, Samsung and Shake Shack.
Absolutely. And we mentioned Samsung a little while ago, but this idea of reviews shaping brand perception for a wide variety of products is critically important. In the product review space, one of the most important things is to do is not just acquire new reviews, but when they happen, respond. For goodness sake, you have to respond. But knowing how to respond from a brand perspective, from the audience perspective, given the type of problem that they're facing, whether it's product or service related, whether it's related to an independent retailer or what have you, is building out that plan and then responding appropriately. And here's the deal: responding quickly and being seen to respond quickly is incredibly important. And it's not just product, it's also location. So Shake Shack is a tremendous brand with tremendous burgers, and their ability to respond quickly and in the moment across a wide variety of locations to customer praise, customer concerns and complaints is incredibly important, because they're not just responding to the person in the moment. They have to be seen to be responding to that person by other people, because people also instinctively understand that some people are just unreasonable. So the tone with which a brand responds, the speed with which it responds in a public forum is incredibly important and a real driver of the business.
Mm-hmm. And ideally, you want to use that information to coach and train and everything else as well. So it's a full circle of how to use that.
Absolutely. What we're talking about here is potentially using some of that content as marketing assets as well. This idea of don't just make marketing for customers, wherever possible, make it from them. This idea of user-generated content whether it's in a review circumstance or even taking reviews and turning it into digital ads. Very, very effective, highly authoritative, very persuasive. We've got 5 recommendations for you that we have touched on today. Create a consistent vision for customer experience internally. Measure customer experience alongside digital marketing throughout the funnel. So don't just measure customer satisfaction after somebody bought something. Measure customer satisfaction or even customer effort earlier after they first interact with the brand. Make your first-party data exchange and data gathering desirable for customers, not a chore. Test and optimize customer experience within your digital marketing stack, and then double down on customer-created content. Those are our 5 recommendations for you here today. Nasser talked about the Forrester omni-channel report that was put together by DAC and Forrester recently. It's terrific, very thorough, very interesting. We did a whole session on it a little while ago. I want you to download that. We'll send you a link to it after this broadcast as well. But if you want to share it with someone else, it's dacgroup.com/omni-channel. Nasser, tell the folks at home about DAC if anybody is not familiar with the brand.
Absolutely. DAC is a Forrester recognized digital performance marketing agency across North America and Europe. Our focus is national and international brands that need to connect with audiences at the hyper-local level and do so at scale. We are a full-service agency bringing together our pillars of strategic insight, performance marketing with paid, owned, and earned media, and technology, both our own custom development as well as enterprise MarTech implementation, and all underpinned by Prove Intelligence, which is our in-house data and analytics center of excellence.
Fantastic. And Jennie, I'd love for you to tell all of our attendees here today a little bit about your biz at Experience Investigators.
Thank you. Yeah, Experience Investigators is a consulting firm as well as a training, workshops. Everything that we do is around our customer experience mission, which is to create fewer ruined days for customers. And we do this by working with enlightened leaders to create meaningful experiences that drive business results. We do have a program right now called Year of CX, which is where you can find the workbook that we mentioned today, as well as the success statement workbook and some other things and other resources at experienceinvestigators.com.
Fewer ruined days for customers. I like that very much. That's a good CX mission statement. I like that one quite a bit. I think we'll hold off on questions for today. I'd like to get out of here a couple minutes early. I think everybody appreciates that. Friends, you're going to get the email with a link and links to the reports and everything else as well. Please feel free to respond to that email and ask any questions that you have, and Jennie and Nasser and myself will answer them as quickly as possible. Before we go, Nasser, any final thoughts?
I just wanted to say thank you to you, Jay and Jennie, for your insight. The framework that you provided at the beginning was excellent and so necessary. I think that I remain inspired by the opportunity. While it's not surprising how disappointed most people are with brands, especially at a deeply disruptive time like today, I think the type of framework that you laid out is exactly the kind of thing that is necessary to build a unified vision of how brands should interact with customers across that entire journey, kind of like we shared with examples from Firestone, from Samsung, from Shake Shack, and so on, and do so because it leads to transformational impact for the business and in a sustainable way. So I just wanted to say thank you and for giving us something that will help marketers ensure that they're not fighting the last war.
Indeed. Jennie, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Nasser, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks to each of you for tuning in as well for how to deliver great customer experiences in your digital marketing. I completely agree with what Nasser said. This is a huge opportunity for us all. Get out there and make it happen. Thanks for joining us. Take care now.
Thank you.